Probation versus parole. Which one is better? Which one is worse? Which one would you rather be on if you had to be on either one of them? Is one better than the other? On this episode of After Prison Show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show, and in this video we are going to be talking about the difference between probation and parole. Is there even a difference? And if so, what is the difference? Have you ever thought about that? Like, what actually is the difference between probation and parole? And I have to tell you that yes, there are some major differences between what exactly probation is versus what exactly parole is. Before we begin this video, I do want to say one thing first. I was going to live stream this evening trying to raise funds to help Dave get a lawyer, but that's just not going to be possible. I was trying to line up a lot of things. It didn't really work out. I'm not sure if you guys caught last night's live stream where we went to try to get my girl and her girlfriend some tattoos. Ended up getting kicked out of one of the tattoo places.
We can't get it on our fingers. It has to be a quarter size. We have to improvise. No.
It's got to be a quarter size?
We're not really into non-stop video, dude.
Huh?
We're not into that.
You're not into that?
I'd rather you not do that. Just need you to pay attention if you want to get something.
It was a horrible experience. I was going to make that video public, but God bless it, it's pretty bad. What I will do is include a link down in the descriptions and also in the comments pinned. So if you do want to help Dave get a lawyer, the Streamlabs link will be included where you can click on that and go donate so that we can help Dave get a better lawyer than this court-appointed piece of shit that he has. And mentioning that, and also without further ado, what do you say we just go ahead and dive head first
Into this video.
I should be doing voiceover work for upcoming films. What happens when an ex-con goes on a fishing trip? After Prison Show, meet
The deadliest catch.
I don't know. Sounds like a pretty good TV show, actually, if you ask me. Probation versus parole. What exactly is the difference? Well, let's go ahead and just start with probation. Probation is what you're given when you go to court. Let's say you caught a charge. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you were stealing a candy bar from a store, I think in Washington State, and loss prevention came out, damn near whooped your ass out there in the parking lot. Let's just say, hypothetically, you were also probably like a teenage girl. Yeah, no bullshit. That's actually something that really did just happen. But let's say you did catch this charge. You were caught stealing a candy bar from a store. You went to court. And when you went to court for this charge, the judge sentenced you to like 30 days in jail. Let's just say hypothetically you got 30 days in jail for stealing this candy bar. But then the judge further goes on to say, as your heart is down between your Junie cakes, the judge further goes on to say, but instead of you serving those 30 days in jail, I'm going to go ahead and suspend all of that time and just give you probation instead. So probation is what you receive when you go to court and they suspend time. Whatever time you're sentenced to, and of that time, whatever time is suspended, well, that amount of time is what you will be facing while on probation. Now, notice how I say what you will be facing. Because you see, I personally believe, and I know I have a very biased opinion saying this, but I personally believe probation is a very, very tricky thing. Because you could go to court, be sentenced to 30 days, and instead of serving those 30 days, they suspend all of that time and instead put you on probation. And at first, that sounds like the better alternative, right? Who the hell would ever want to do 30 days in jail versus being out on probation instead? But you see, the thing of it is when they give you probation instead of jail time, you're not just going to be on that probation for those 30 days that that judge sentenced you to. No, that's usually not how it works. In some cases, maybe it does work, but I've never personally heard of it happening like that at all. Instead, what the judge is going to say is, I'm going to go ahead and sentence you to 30 days in jail. I'm going to suspend all of that time, and we're going to go ahead and put you on indefinite probation, or we're going to put you on probation for 1 year. Well, indefinite probation could mean forever, and 1 year is definitely a hell of a lot longer than 30 days. I know, I'm a freaking math genius over here. But the point of this is that they put you on this probation for 1 year or indefinitely, and indefinitely means that it's up to the probation's discretion as to when they're going to go ahead and release you, saying, hey, look, you have completed probation. And with whatever amount of time that you have to serve on probation, if you screw it up in any way and end up violating it, well, the most jail or prison time that they could give you for that violation, for violating that probation, is whatever the sentence was that you were sentenced to originally that was suspended. Now, let's use another case, for example, like my case. You see, in my case, I was sentenced to like 15 years in prison, and they ended up suspending like 8 years of that where I ended up only having to serve 7 years. And you can rest assured that with my criminal record and the fact that I've always gotten in trouble basically throughout my entire life leading up until this last time that I just spent in prison, taking all of that into consideration, they most certainly sentenced me to indefinite probation. Meaning again that it's up to the discretion of the probation as to when I'm released from probation and they say that, hey, look, you have completed this. But let's just say hypothetically, and I need some wood to knock on right now. But let's just say, hypothetically speaking, in some third dimension parallel universe, some far off fucking galaxy, that God forbid I violated my probation. Well, if I did for whatever reason, whether it was a failure to report, whether it was the fact that I caught a charge, whether it was the fact that I didn't tell my probation officer I was moving, whether it was for anything, and believe me, they can violate you over the littlest,
dumbest of things.
Yeah, they can literally violate you over like pretty much anything that they feel is worth violating you for. But if for whatever reason I violated probation and with those 8 years just basically hanging over my head like a fucking dark stormy cloud, when I would go to court for that violation, they have up to 8 years that they can send me back to prison for. Now, would they give me the entire 8 years? Well, that would completely depend on what I violated probation for. If I brought back a charge, let's say, for example, another drug charge, oh, I most certainly am getting at least half of those 8 years, if not probably the entire fucking 8 years, because I'm going to walk into that courtroom and they're going to say, yo, you definitely just don't learn your lesson.
Do ya?
Yeah, and that's probably how it would go for me. And real quick, before I move on to parole, I want to tell you one little crazy story about me being on probation in the past. Obviously, in the past, I got in a hell of a lot of trouble, and I was also on probation in the past as well. Now, when I was on probation in the past, I had 3 years hanging over my head. So meaning that if I ever violated, they had up to 3 years that they could send me to jail for or send me to prison for. But do you know how long it took me to get off of probation with those 3 years hanging over my head? It literally took me 7 years to get those 3 years that were hanging over my head wiped out. And do you know the only way that I was able to get those 3 years wiped out? Well, that would be due to the fact that I was violating probation. In fact, I violated probation 3 times. The first time I violated probation, they gave me 1 year. The second time I violated probation, they gave me 6 months. And then on the third and final time that I violated probation, they gave me a year and a half. Which if you add all 3 of those violations up with all of the time that I was sentenced to with those, well, that comes up to a whopping 3 years. Again, I'm telling you, I should have pursued some sort of a math career because I'm like a freaking math wizard here. But during this time that I was on probation, I remember hearing like, anytime that you would violate probation, they were never going to give you the same PO again. And do you want to know the craziest damn thing about that is every time I violated probation, I would get locked up, do my time, come home, go back to report to probation, and I would end up getting the same damn PO. I will never forget this woman's name for the life of me. Her name was Miss Dawson, and my God, did this woman not like me at all. In fact, I remember going into her office after I had just gotten out of jail after my second violation, and I walked into her office, and literally, like, as soon as I walked in the door, she just started going off on me. She was like, I don't even know why you're coming in my office. We already know you ain't gonna do right on probation. And I'm walking in her office like, hey, why all of this? Why? I mean, I'm literally just coming out of jail, okay? I'm trying to turn over a new leaf in my life. My God, can't you please, woman, just give me a third chance? And I went on to tell her this. I will never forget this, but I went on to tell her, I said, because, just go ahead and like turn the page. Let's start a new chapter here, woman. Because you already know what I'm going to do if I do violate probation for a third time.
You're gonna have to come find me because I'm not turning myself in.
Yeah, that did not go over too well with her. Oh my God, what are you telling me? Why are you even in here? And to be honest with you, if I can remember correctly, that's pretty much exactly how she talked to me. Why are you in here? She hated me. And by the way, back then, of course, I did end up violating probation. I went on the run, and yes, they did have to come find me, which they eventually did, and I ended up getting locked up to have to serve that last 1.5 years that I had of that 3 years that was lingering over my head. 3 years I was originally sentenced to that was completely wiped away, and it took me 7 damn years to wipe clean that slate. But moving on to parole. What is parole? What is the difference between probation and parole? I mean, that is the name of this video. What parole refers to is when you are released from prison. Now, in some states, I do believe it's still available in some states, you can be sentenced to prison with the possibility of parole. So you can be sentenced to something like 20 years or 25 years or 40 years with the possibility of parole. And what parole refers to is every year you're going to go in front of a parole board, they're going to review your case, and I can promise you if you get 20, 25, 40 years, you're going to go in front of that parole board every single damn year for like probably the first 15, 20 plus years. Can you imagine going in front of a parole board every year for that many damn years just to let them tell you,
denied?
Yeah, not a lot of people make parole. How people actually do make parole, I mean, it's almost like Russian roulette. There's either a chance you're going to get it or an even better, more greater likely chance that you're not. Parole also refers to getting out of prison and going back onto probation. But in that case, once you've served time in prison, like an extensive period of time, you're then released on parole. And in a lot of cases, parole can be much tougher than probation and a hell of a lot easier to end up getting you locked right back up in prison. In fact, sometimes it would seem that being on parole, they're just waiting for the opportunity to throw your ass back in the can. Because let's use this for an example. Let's say you've been locked up for 25 years and you've been going in front of the parole board for 25 years, and on that 25th year, for whatever reason, they decide they're going to grant you parole. Well, if they did decide to do that, they can then set up their own stipulations as to the rules and guidelines and parameters for what you must live within. For example, it could be that you have to stay in a halfway house, which is going to have its own crazy rules as well. Maybe you have to find a job within like the first month, maybe 2 months, and just imagine the pressure of that after serving 25 years in prison. What in the hell are you going to use for a job reference?
I was buffing floors inside of a penitentiary.
Yeah, I'm just not really feeling your application. Next, please. The major difference between probation and parole is probation is usually what you're given when you go to court and you're given basically a second chance or even a third chance. And parole is what you're given when you are released from prison, also with a second chance or a third chance. Now, here in the state of Virginia, we don't have parole anymore. In fact, I don't know what it's like in other states. I do believe there's probably other states that may still have parole. But here in the good old state of Virginia, parole went out the window back in like 95 or 97. I can't remember. But after one of those 2 years, they stopped sentencing guys with the eligibility of parole. 20 years, 25 years, 40 years, you're never going to hear the judge utter those words with the eligibility of parole. And in fact, what I think they do say in some cases when you're given those football numbers, basically 20, 40, life, when you're given time like that, I think what they will say is without the eligibility of parole. Meaning there's no chance in hell you're gonna get out of prison before you've served that football number of time that that judge just sentenced you to inside of that courtroom. As to which is better, probation versus parole, well, if one was actually better than the other, it would have to be probation, because probation at least gives you a chance right there from the beginning that you don't have to go to prison. Whereas parole, you're already in prison serving some hella time. Hey, what time is it? It's hella time. So my final thesis of this video would be that parole is a lot worse than probation. And as to which one you would rather have, well, go ahead and take it from me. You'd rather have neither. Is that a word? Neither? Neither? Whichever. You wouldn't rather have either one of them. Hey, look, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a big old like and a comment letting me know exactly what you thought about it. As always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted, nor ever get locked up or arrested on charges where you will be facing either probation or parole. And make the most of every day.